Welcome to the Geek to Geek podcast, where cat videos are a thing this week. I'm Void, and I'm here with my co-host, Beej.
It's a kitty cat.
Yeah, today we're talking about YouTube, kind of. So one of the questions that, I had for Beej, because we were talking about this the other week, I was like, what do you watch on YouTube? And I know we've kind of, talked around the edges of this topic before, some channels that we dive into or creators that we follow, but we were just talking about, media consumption habits and stuff like that. And it's the time of the year right now where, gaming is kind of just on hiatus. I mean, I'm playing stuff, but I'm not playing anything new. And it's just like that January, February lull that happens every year. There's another lull that usually happens in the summer. But this one, I feel like it's worse because we just came out of that fall release season where there's always new things every week and there's so much interesting to dig into and talk about. So I find myself watching more video right now, like shows and, movies and whatever, but I watch a lot of YouTube. So in talking to you, I found out that you don't actually watch a whole lot. And I just thought it would be an interesting topic for you and I to actually get out there what we actually watch, how we use YouTube day to day. Because I think you and I watch YouTube differently, and I think that both of us watched it differently than a younger audience would right now. I know my kids watch it totally differently than I do. So that's kind of where we're coming from with this topic.
And I don't understand how younger people use it. And I sound like an old crotchety man, I know, but I have students and then who talk about the way that they use YouTube. I'm like, that's not what I ever would have thought. And then your kids, I have friends with kids who do the exact same thing that you've told me that yours do. And I'm just like, that is not something I ever would have expected to hear from somebody, but I totally get why kids watch these egg videos and stuff like that, where they just want to see what's going on.
Yeah, my kids watch Shopkin opening videos and anything that's a blind bag that can be opened and you can try to collect everything. And they have, there are some that are common, some that are rare and ultra rares. I mean, there's entire videos of just half an hour and a half of somebody who's just paid hundreds of dollars to get blind bag after blind bag, and they open them up one by one and talk about them, and they line them all up, and kids eat that up. My kids love that kind of thing. And
do yours play that? Because I've known kids who when they're playing, that's what they do is they narrate it like they're in one of those videos with their toys.
My kids do. They don't try to narrate those opening blind bag videos, but they have a lot of other channels they watch that are more interactive. It's a family that makes a YouTube channel together, where they do arts and crafts or projects or science or basic stuff like that. And my kids will sometimes, if they're making a project, they will turn it into a fake video and narrate it as if they're narrating to a camera, which is really interesting. They're just kind of honestly, it's kind of the equivalent of me playing Power Rangers when I was their age. I saw Power Rangers on TV. I wanted to be a Power Ranger. When I'm playing, I'm I'm a Power Ranger. And for them, it's, they watch YouTube. They see these kids making videos of doing activities and projects. So when they're doing activities and projects, they want to pretend they're making a video. And I mean, it's interesting.
We don't grow out. Oh, yeah, that is interesting. And we don't grow out of that either. I was in Target 2 nights ago, and they had the new Power Ranger swords in the toy section. I grabbed 2 of those and just started, attacking my wife with it, going I'm a Power Ranger now! And she was like, oh, my God. And I'm I'm playing a Power Ranger. I can't wait for this movie. And it's because that's what I did when I was 10 years old. That's what I loved. So I see new Power Rangers toys and I lose my mind.
Yes. So that's part of it. But anyway, that's my kids. I know we want to talk more about how you and I use it.
Right.
The one thing that I think is interesting, and this is more me using my work mind, my marketing mind, YouTube is still the second biggest search engine in the world. And it's second only to Google. So all those other ones out there, the DuckDuckGos and the Bings of the world, all of that, that's all third, fourth, fifth. Those are down the line from YouTube. I mean, the search engines, it goes Google and then it goes YouTube. So YouTube is huge. I mean, I use it to look up if I need to figure out how to do something and it's physical, and it wouldn't make sense to just look up the words. It's something I actually need to see, which honestly, if it's something I could look up and it works that I could read it or I could watch it, I would still rather read it really quick. But sometimes there's just something visual and you need,
Yep.
how do I do this? And so you look up a video really quick.
I mean, I know zero about cars, and I have fixed things in my Prius because of watching YouTube videos that are up there. And I mean, like, stuff like that is fantastic. I didn't even think about that as, the way I daily use it, because it's so rare that happens. But I mean, I don't know how to change a headlight, but I learned how instead of paying $400 at a dealership or a garage, and just replaced my own headlights and things like that. But that's what I use YouTube for more than pure entertainment and sitting down as part of my television, which I know a lot of people kind of use it as TV these days.
Yeah, and I do that somewhat, but I'll talk about that kind of when I get to my section here. I'm more curious, do you actually subscribe to anybody? Like, do you follow certain channels and watch like everything they put out, or do you just randomly come back to it and kind of pick up whatever?
Mostly coming back randomly to it and pick up whatever is like recommended in certain genres and like categories that YouTube will give us on the app. But the ones that we actually subscribe to and watch pretty much everything, and I say we is because YouTube isn't something that I just care about on my own. It's something that actually Jennifer and I do as part of the TV that we watch together, or a couple of these channels. And it's like VetRanch. I may have talked on here about VetRanch before. Have I told you about it? Yeah, where we were just watching it, and we've gotten to the point where we watch everything that's put out because we like watching these hurt animals getting better. Like, it's uplifting. The people are nice. It really is just kind of heartening to watch that. So we subscribe to it and watch everything that comes out from them. And then there's one called Woodworking for Mere Mortals that we watch every week because my wife, or every time that there's something new out, because the dude is funny, Steve Ramsey's funny, and my wife is a woodworker and she's learning how to do all of this stuff. I know zero about it. I'm bad with my hands. Like, zombie apocalypse comes, I'm dead because I have zero practical skills. I can outrun them for a while, and unless I'm trying to explain Beowulf to them, I mean, like, I'm dead. Like, no practical skills. But my wife is great with her hands, and so she's making tables and shelves and benches and all this kind of stuff. So she watches Woodworking for Mere Mortals to really get these basic foundational skills and to see how you do different things. And I watch it with her because I'm in there, and it's interesting, and the dude makes me laugh, but I don't like get anything out of it. I watch it because of her. And then she made me start watching Dr. PimplePopper, and I thought I was going to hate it. Please tell me you've gone and watched some Dr. PimplePopper after we had that short discussion earlier this week.
Nope. I saw it in the show notes and I asked, is this exactly what it sounds like? And you said yes. And I said, I do not ever need to see that. So no, I have not seen it. I'm not going to see it. It is fine.
It is exactly what you think it is. It is a dermatologist named Sandra Lee out of, I think, Los Angeles. And what's interesting about this is that it's not just pimple popping. That's just what the branding is. It's a dermatology channel where it's going through removing cysts, blackheads, all sorts of other kinds of dermatological stuff.
This is entertaining for you?
And it's entertaining because I like learning things that I don't know. And I've actually learned a great deal about dermatology and the way that skin works from watching this. And also, there is something just unbelievably cathartic about it. And I don't like watching like really gross like pimple extractions where a lot of pus or anything comes out. But what I like is I found one the other night where they essentially had to saw off the top of it where it looked like a patty of sausage.
Why?
And it was unbelievably cathartic because I'm kind of a sicko, and I've like always wondered like, what would it be like to cut something off of like a person? And it's like, that's what it would look like.
Okay. Next channel. This is gross. Okay, oh my gosh.
Yeah. And I watched some, that just makes me happy because that kind of thing doesn't gross me out at all. I watch some fitness channels occasionally, because I think the people are nice. I like learning things, not like exercise, like how-tos and things like that, but like just like people's journeys, like kind of vlogs. One was called ObeseToBeast that I really like. He's a nice guy, lost a bunch of weight, got kind of internet famous because he posted a video of what loose skin looks like after massive weight loss. And like he could pull his skin off and see it stretching from his stomach. And it's like, people don't talk about about that after massive weight loss. So it's like, this dude's really nice. I've watched some of his stuff. And then I really like one called RunSelfieRepeat, where she started taking pictures during marathons of cute guys as she was taking selfies. And she's just, nice to watch. I keep it on in the background sometimes, just listening as someone progresses during running training and marathon training like that. That's the kind of stuff I watch on YouTube. We recently found one called what was it called? CineFix. And it's kind of a best of film analysis channel. And I know you've talked about one called every frame of painting.
Yep.
Yeah. And CineFix isn't quite like that, but it's like the 10 best uses of color in film history, or the 10 best uses of camera movement. And it's really interesting to go back and watch films to where it was talking about the camera becoming a character, as opposed to just kind of showing the action. And I really, really like this because it ties into that kind of film scholar thing that I was doing for so long and going back and working on my master's and doctorate level. I love that kind of thing. So Jennifer and I found this and have watched a few of theirs and intend on going back and watching a lot of their backlog. And then there's kitty videos and puppy videos. I love puppy and kitty videos. I don't tend to watch them a lot, on their own. If somebody posts one, sometimes I'll watch it. My wife will send me really exceptional ones, but I don't tend to seek them out. But with everything that's been going on lately, politically, just kind of the cultural, just that overwhelming sense of negativity that happens, it's like Jennifer and I will go to YouTube. And I know I talked with this on one of the newest episodes of the Health Hacks podcast, but we go and we turn on compilations of the funniest puppies or cutest kittens or whatever like this, and then just play long playlists of animal videos, because it reminds us that there is still pure goodness in the world. It's there is nothing negative about this. It is all just oh, and laughing and cuteness that sometimes I just hug my dog and I'm just man, this dog there's nothing but goodness in this dog. And that's the way that those videos make me feel. You watch an hour of cats and dogs playing and puppies being friends with chickens, and it's just this is what is right in the world. And it really uplifts us to be okay, we're not looking at politics, we're not reading about the resistance and all this negative stuff. It's just okay, here are some kitties, and we love that. So that's really the main stuff that I use YouTube for, watching music videos, that kind of stuff I can't find on other streaming stations.
Cool. Yeah, and that's kind of you said that's basically everything, right? I mean, besides, obviously, both of us, if people pass around a link or you see it blow up on social media, or, someone texts it to you. But outside of that, those are everything that you do regularly.
Yeah, I mean, I might catch up on some Last Week Tonight or Stephen Colbert clips of something that I missed on a late night show because I'm asleep, or anything, Samantha Bee episodes, monologues. But other than that, I really don't use YouTube that much for anything other than just that kind of tertiary to the side. It's third level of TV there, where it's stuff that we like, but we don't consider it anything like a primary form of entertainment. When we want something mindless, we just sit on the couch, watch some puppy videos, watch some woodworking videos, or some cysts being removed.
Okay, so it's the last one that just throws me off. Okay, so I also, I'll click on stuff that gets passed around and links that get shared and blow up on social media sometimes, but I don't really like watching YouTube on my computer. I don't really like watching it on my phone. And I think one of the things that actually made me start getting into it in the past couple years here is that PLEX has really good support for YouTube. So what you can do is you can take a YouTube link, basically send it over to your PLEX server, and it will just store it in a to be watched section. And then when you go into PLEX, just as if you were going to watch a show or a movie or whatever else you have through your media server, there's a whole section in there of videos that are waiting to be watched. So whenever I hit a video and it's over a minute, maybe a minute and a half, I have a little button that I can click, and it's basically just a Chrome extension, and it will search the page that I'm on in my web browser for any video that's there. And if it finds one, which on YouTube it always finds one, it will grab it and it'll just add it into my PLEX queue, essentially. So I don't ever watch all of these ones I'm going to talk about here in a second. I don't ever watch these on my computer. I will go probably once a week. I will click on every one of these channels, and if there's anything that I want to watch, I will hit that button and I will just add it to my Plex queue. So when I actually sit down to watch it, I'm watching it on my TV in my living room on my couch. And that also frees up my phone. Like if I want to do other stuff while I'm watching, you know, I can still be on social media, or I can be playing like a Fire Emblem Heroes or something that's low key. So it's not like the one and only thing that I'm doing most of the time. Some of the channels are really good and they take up all my attention, but a lot of these aren't, you know?
And I have a question about that, because whenever I find a video like that, there's like a save for later on YouTube that that I use. Like I see that as being more useful than Plex, because that way it's just in the YouTube app or the YouTube webpage, or, you know, I use the PS3 YouTube app to watch all the stuff on my couch as well. And I've just like, I don't see the benefit in using Plex, using a third party one as opposed to the first party one that with the built-in native support.
Plex is like the media hub for my whole house. So it is the first party everything to me, basically. Like if I ever have a chance to do my media through Plex, I will always do that. And then everything else comes secondary.
Plex doesn't work well for me. On the PS3, I've run into issues where I have to go in and restart my computer and my server. It's just constant like pain and trouble to use it. So I've pretty much stopped using it for anything that I was doing it with.
Yeah, and I never have trouble with Plex. Plex is like one of the best programs that I use across anything. Like I love Plex Media Server. It's so good. And I mean, I would rather watch stuff off Plex that I can watch on Netflix. Like if I have the show already, like I have the entire run of The West Wing, you know, because it's my wife's favorite show. It's a show I really like. I have it all in Plex. I have it all locally on my computer. I could watch it on Netflix, but why would I? Like Plex works great, you know. And then you're also not, part of it is like for stuff that we rewatch, like a couple movies that are our favorites and then shows like that, then you're not eating up the bandwidth, you know. You're not eating up the bandwidth of the house. You're not like, if you have a data cap wherever you live, you're not incurring data cap costs because you're not streaming so much HD video. It's all of that kind of thing comes into play. But yeah, I mean, Plex is, I've talked about it before, so I won't go on too much more, but Plex is, you know, the main media hub for my house. So anyway, that's how I do my YouTube. Is I almost always throw it into the Plex queue, and then I will sit down and I will just watch video after video on Plex. So I have a lot more channels and like creators than BJ does. I tried to group them by category. And so the one thing that doesn't really fit into this is that I will also sometimes look up gaming videos. If it's a game that I'm hearing a lot of good things about, but I want to see some actual play, I'll go into YouTube and type whatever, you know, whatever person's channel I land on is what I land on. I just need to see a couple minutes of actual gameplay instead of game that's been filtered through the press or through, you know, controlled coverage kind of thing.
Yeah, and I used to watch a lot of World of Warcraft boss videos and that kind of thing, you know, the prep videos to see how that went. But when I'm not raiding, I mean, that's not something that I care terribly much about. I'll go and see what's going on in a game I haven't played in a long time, or to look at, this boss fight at the end of this raid, you know, they've done cool things with it. But that's how I keep up with a lot of games I don't play anymore. But I don't even do that so often that I even thought about it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just a side note. But okay, I kind of made 3 tiers of things here. So I'm going to work my way up towards my favorite ones, essentially. So the first round here, let's talk about channels that I'm subscribed to. And I kind of just scan their new stuff, but I probably only watch a video off of any one of these channels like every couple months. Like I stay subscribed because it's worth it when I hit on those videos that are really good. But most of the time, I kind of check in on it. I glance through all their new videos and I'm like, nope, I'm fine. So a lot of these are more on the corporate side. So Penny Arcade TV, I really like the Penny Arcade guys. Every once in a while they have a really good video, but a lot of them are misses. There's Dungeons and Dragons and Nintendo and Star Wars. All of those are kind of like big corporations that try to put out a lot of content, but only rarely is it worth my time. But, you know, every once in a while there's a new Star Wars teaser that like drops, or something with Star Wars Rebels that'll drop on that channel, or Nintendo. Like, you know, I can ignore them for months on end, and then suddenly they will put out 15 videos of new Switch games when they get announced all on one day. So it's stuff like that. I keep my eye on it because every once in a while it really pays off, but I'm not watching everything. And then there's a channel that you've probably heard of called Rocket Jump. And there's a sister channel. I've heard of it. Okay, there's a sister channel. I don't
even know what it is.
Yeah, okay. So there's Rocket Jump, and then there's Rocket Jump Film School. And they're both the same people. Rocket Jump is like their shorts that they've produced, or they have a couple longer form things. Like there's a series called Video Game High School. It's like full 30-minute episodes, but they do a lot of shorts, and they're basically their own production company now. And after they got big enough that they started making big productions, they spun off this extra channel called Rocket Jump Film School. And it teaches you a lot of behind the scenes for production, but very like 101 level. I, every once in a while, will watch those, but I know most of the content that they're teaching because I did that professionally. But every once in a while, they hit on something that's more on the like cinema end and less on the production end, and those I will watch. So again, it's a channel that pays off every once in a while because I stay subscribed.
And that's the kind of thing that I would watch because I know so little about video production and I'm interested in it, but it's not something that it's not something you can read about. So for a long time, I really was watching a bunch of like YouTube, like, what did they call it? YouTube University or something like that? Creator School, something, where I would watch a lot of stuff like this just to learn the basics of it and understand it. But I've never, gone and created anything really because, I hate being bad at things.
Yeah, I can see that. And then the only other one in this category, and this one might eventually get bumped up into the next category, but it's Waypoint. So Waypoint is a newish website. It's a division of, I think it's Vice. It used to be like a very, very small subset of Vice, and they called it like Vice Gaming. But they got a new, whatever, editor-in-chief, or I don't actually know the structure of their company.
Oh, yeah, I did read about this. Yeah,
they got Austin Walker, who's just fantastic, and he's done a bunch of other gaming stuff, and he has started to hire up, a crew around him who do reporting, but they don't do just the day-to-day news reporting. They do like in-depth stories that are really interesting. So I already love the website. Like I said, I think it came out in the last 6 months when they rebranded it and got a new set of writers and, video guys, bloggers, podcasters, like whatever. They do everything. They're a modern media wing of a company, and their writing is already fantastic. So it's one of the sites that I read like everything that comes across from them, but their video content is starting to get there, but it's not quite there yet. They're still kind of getting their studio space set up. They're still getting their technology figured out. Some of their streams are just kind of like them fighting with the tech still, but it's something that I could see given a couple more months that I would start watching it more and more over time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I've seen stuff like that. That's actually kind of the way I am with print publications, and I shouldn't even say print. That's what I say for. That's what I use my catch-all for, like just normal text-based websites. Is I do that when I'm like, oh, this is going to be really good soon, and I'm going to come back and check on it, but they haven't found their footing yet.
Yes, exactly. So that's where Waypoint is right now. But that gets me to kind of my second tier of stuff. And these are channels that I watch most of their content. I don't watch everything, but I watch most of what they put out. Yeah, so these are ones that I start like really recommending. One is, it's Mark Brown, which sounds very generic, but if you Google or search for on YouTube Game Maker's Toolkit or Boss Keys, those are kind of his two key series. Game Maker's Toolkit is where he dives in deep on gameplay mechanics and gameplay design and talks about like the history of it, where it's at now, where it could go in the future. It's a fantastic series. And then the other one called Boss Keys is him playing through all of the Legend of Zelda games in order and talking about how the dungeons are constructed and how it changes over time. And he has come up with his very own way to map out Zelda dungeons based on like the flow through them. And it's super fascinating. I'm not even going to try to do it justice in audio form because you have to see it, but look up Boss Keys if that sounds interesting to you.
Yeah, that sounds interesting and weird.
Yeah, it's really good stuff, though. Another one in this category is Shay Lindsay, which is Chez, Lindsay. And it's somebody who, it's Lindsay. She used to do stuff on another channel for someone else, and then she spun up her own YouTube channel. But she does breakdowns of like story and characters and structure of narrative, and it's usually related to movies, but not all the time. Some of her sub-series in there are related to like what is the canon of a character, how has a character changed over time through literature and print and then movies and like different adaptations. And this is one that Beej, I think you might actually like more than I do. Because I watched,
that sounds really cool.
Yeah, I watched some of it, but I don't watch all of it. As I've been watching through it, I thought that you would probably like this one a lot.
Yeah, I probably would because that's exactly the kind of thing that I enjoy. Like, I love that kind of tracking across time.
Yeah, and some of her really good ones that I loved were like 40-minute video essays on a movie where she digs really, really deep. So that's cool. That's Shay Lindsay. The next one is Vsauce. which is one that I heard about for a long time, and I never checked it out because I thought the name was dumb, but it turns out that I liked it, so I should have taken people's recommendation. But there's 3 Vsauce channels. I watch the main one that's just called Vsauce, or sometimes I think they call it Vsauce 1. So basically each channel is a different guy, but they're all kind of part of the same organization, group, whatever. But yeah, Vsauce, he talks about like philosophy, math, psychology, science, things like that are usually really interesting to me. Sometimes it's a little mind-bending, but not in a bad way. It's things that like expand my mind and make me think, which I like.
Okay.
And it's usually interesting.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, it's usually interesting, but every once in a while it gets a little bit overdone. Like most of these are longer. They're like the 20 to 30 minute range generally. Sometimes it's just like, move on to your next point. You know, like you've gone a little bit too long on summarizing this thing and then coming back to summarizing it again, which is why I don't watch absolutely everything they put out, but I watch most of it. And then there's extra credits, which they have kind of 2 sub-series in the extra credits channel. One is all about gaming. That's the one that I can recommend. I watch every single one of those that comes out. And then they have another wing that's all about like history. And I don't like those as much, but I know that some people do. So if you're into history, maybe check out that. But yeah, look up extra credits. They do good stuff. And then there's a new-ish channel called No Clip by Danny O'Dwyer. Have you ever looked at any of his stuff?
No, I've never even heard of that one.
Okay. He worked for, I want to say it was GameSpot for a long time, and then another publication before that. But he's a guy who does really good, really in-depth video, like essentially documentaries, but about the video game industry. And he felt more and more hampered over time working within these big media companies, because the big media companies want you to churn out content after content to get views and clicks and likes and subscribes, right? And he wanted to do more of the documentary things that take months on end to actually get the interviews, get the information, put it together in a good way, and make a coherent documentary out of it. And he got to do a little bit of that, and that was always his best work. But to be able to do that, he would have to do all that churn content, you know, stream and impressions and reviews. And he didn't want to do that. He wanted to devote all of his time to doing video game documentaries. So he left his work, he went crowdfunded, and he made this channel called No Clip. And that's all that he's doing now. He's only doing in-depth video game documentaries, and they are really, really good. There's only a couple out right now because he takes his time. But it shows, like, it really shows how much time they put into each one of these, which you might like. Yeah, you might like because you like documentaries.
Yeah, I love documentaries, and I really like video game documentaries. That's something that I prefer over, like, Let's Play and other types of gaming channels. I don't really like watching a whole lot of live streams and just gameplay stuff, but I love documentary-style videos on history of gaming, how, you know, just the background in so many things, how things tie together. Like, those are the videos that I tend to watch a lot of, especially when they get recommended to me.
Yeah, so you might want to check out No Clip. It's good. And then another one that I've talked about in the past is Tested. And they always brand themselves as Tested.com, even though it's just a channel called Tested on YouTube. I mean, they have the website also. But it's basically what Adam Savage does now. Even though they did it even before Mythbusters was done, it's what he does now. So yeah, it's Tested.com, and it's Adam. And then he has like 3, 4, 5 other people that are on camera, plus like a camera crew that's regular. So it's a big group of people. And the reason I don't watch everything they put out is because the Adam Savage videos are fantastic, but the ones that don't have him at all, some of the other hosts I just don't like at all. They're just not good on camera. And some of them are okay, but most of the time I look at the Tested channel. If there's any video with Adam in it, I add it to my queue and I watch it, and I'm happy with it because it's about him either making things or investigating things like props and filmmaking and stuff like that. But it's mostly him and making things and the process he uses to create, which I just find fascinating.
And I don't like Adam Savage, so I don't think I would like that channel at all. I know that we have talked about in the past how I kind of got burned out on Mythbusters after a while. And that's the kind of thing that I don't think I would enjoy.
Yeah, and I don't think you would either if you don't like him. But if you guys do, if you were ever a fan of Mythbusters, anything like that, check it out. You might find it interesting. And then I get to my last tier here of things that I love. These are the creators and channels. I watch absolutely like everything they put out, like no question. So the first one on here, why don't you take a stab at saying that, Beej? Can you pronounce it? Because I cannot.
Kurzgesagt?
Something like that, yeah. It will be in the show notes if you guys want to look it up.
Kurzgesagt. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a channel, and I want to say it's based out of like Australia or something. So maybe if you're Australian, it's a word that means something to you.
It looks like it's German. Like having taken like 3 years of German in college, like I think it's German.
Maybe, but it is kind of similar to what I like about Vsauce, but it's never overdone. You know, it's the philosophy, math, psychology, science, like earth science, kind of projecting towards the future, futurology, all of that kind of stuff that makes you think. That's what Kurzgesagt is. Oh man, I'm just gonna stop trying to say the name, but that's what it is. It's always well done. And it's never overdone. So I've watched everything they put out. I'm going to keep watching everything they put out. It's really good stuff.
Kurzgesagt, German for In a Nutshell, is a Munich-based YouTube channel and design studio with a distinctive perspective on design and animation within the fields of education, science, and commerce. Founded in 2013, the studio engages in information design projects of all kinds.
Oh, that's okay. Cool. In a Nutshell is the other thing they go by. I forgot about that part, but that makes sense if it actually means that. Because,
it does.
Yeah, they take big topics and then they condense it down to, you know, in a nutshell, how do we explain this to the general public?
Okay, that makes sense.
It's good stuff. The next series so you would have to go to Polygon, and the Polygon YouTube channel is full of lots of different creators, lots of different people, and these are generally the channels that... It bugs me in YouTube that like sometimes there are creators, but they're grouped into like a larger channel, and you like one creator, but you don't want all of the junk that everyone else puts out. Do you have any? Yeah. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do. I know exactly what that is. That's why I wanted to really like Geek and Sundry for a while.
Yes,
like I love the idea of it.
That's what I was thinking
of. That kind of conglomeration. It's like I can't find what I want because it's just so much stuff. It's like you throw a bunch of noodles at the fridge to see which ones stick, and it's like I can't find the one noodle I want.
Yes. So Griffin McElroy works for Polygon, and every video piece that he puts out is worth watching, but you can safely ignore all of the other stuff on that site. I mean, if you know any of the other personalities or any of the other writers, some of it's okay, but nothing compares to the stuff that Griffin does. So he has one of his ongoing series right now is called Touch the Skyrim. It's where him and another guy, every episode, they add more mods to Skyrim until they break it. So by the time they finish a version of it, the Skyrim is just unrecognizable as Skyrim anymore. And
that's kind of cool.
They did the first 3 episodes. They called it like 1.0, 1.1, 1.2, you know, like that. They got to the point where they just like, they basically essentially broke the game, and then they reset everything. And then they just started version 2.0 with a whole new mod stack, you know, and they kind of make up their own objectives and their own things as they go along. They talk about how they want to tweak it. And then Griffin will add tons and tons of mods to the game, and the other guy is not the one playing, he's the one watching. So every time a new mod pops up, the guy has to try to call it out and be like, wait, that's not normal Skyrim. So it's kind of this back and forth between adding mods and then the other guy trying to figure out what mods have been added. But it's just funny and it's entertaining and it's good stuff. Another one of his that was more straightforward, he did a Pokemon Nuzlocke run that was really good. It was just, I've never been that interested in watching somebody run through a game before, but Griffin's Pokemon Nuzlocke run was really good.
You may have to explain to me what Nuzlocke is.
Okay, Nuzlocke is, and I'm not going to remember the rules off the top of my head, it's a very, very hardcore way to play Pokemon. Okay. It's essentially, you have to play through the game. If any of your characters die, if any of your Pokemon die, or not die, you know, in Pokemon they get knocked out. But if a Pokemon ever gets knocked out, you have to treat it as if it is dead, and you have to go release it forever.
Oh, so, you did tell me about that at some point. We did talk about that.
That's one of the rules. Another one is like you can only catch the very first Pokemon that you encounter on each new route or something like that. There's a bunch of rules in place, but it's a kind of standardized hardcore way to play Pokemon where you are taking all of these rules the community has set up and putting them on yourself. You know, the game would never, there's no like option to switch it on in the game. It's just something that you set as your own challenge. That's what a Nuzlocke run is.
That makes sense. Like I'm not that kind of gamer, but I always, like you do the, what was it called? It's not the 4 hero challenge, but for something Fiesta.
Four Job Fiesta.
Where that's the kind of thing that I know that you enjoy and I love hearing about, but I just get frustrated by that kind of gaming.
Yeah, I can totally see that. But like, it's just interesting. Griffin likes to take games and then play them in fascinating ways. So another one that I really like is called Monster Factory. It's one that he does with one of his brothers. And Monster Factory, they go into games that have very robust character creators, and they try to make essentially crazy characters out of it and give them a backstory and like build up the fiction around the character for like what this character could be and why they would look this way and like how they fit into the world. And they just do it on the fly. You know, it's basically an improv session done through a character creator. And then they take that character into the game and they play the first part of the game and just kind of interact with the world a little bit. And if you're interested in that at all, look up The Final Pam, because it's one of my favorite ones. It's what they did for Fallout 4. It was really, really funny, really, really good. And another one in this vein, he just started, there's only a couple episodes out, but it's called Peacecraft or World of Peacecraft. And it's where he's trying to go basically everywhere in Azeroth in World of Warcraft without ever fighting anything or being aggressive.
I've seen stuff like that. I've seen the guy trying to level up. I don't know if he's still doing it, leveling up only by pacifistic ways, where he was like doing it through herbalism and trade skill gathering.
Yep, and it's that kind of idea, except instead of trying to level up, he's just trying to take a tour around the whole world. It's interesting and it's fascinating, but again, it's because of him. Like, it's his personality that drives all of these. So if any of that sounds remotely interesting, go to the Polygon channel and then look for the ones done by Griffin, because Griffin is just fantastic. The next two I won't dwell on very long because I've talked about these guys before, but Shut Up and Sit Down does basically the best like tabletop board game content out there, and their video reviews are the best thing that they do. So go to their YouTube channel, watch all their video reviews. They're fantastic if you're even remotely interested in tabletop gaming. And then two of the guys from Shut Up and Sit Down do the same type of thing for video games, and it's called Cool Ghosts, or you can go to coolghosts.net. It's just like, it's one of these channels that I like because they're covering a topic that I'm super passionate about. You know, they're doing video game coverage, but they are not doing anything with like the churn news cycle. What's the latest? What's the greatest? It's like any part of video gaming that they think is interesting, they will dive deep into it, but they will easily ignore all the AAA games if they don't have anything interesting to say about them. They won't make content just to make content. They only make it when they're very passionate about something or interested about something. Good. Or they have something good to say about it. That's why Cool Ghost is on here. I've watched everything they've done. I'm going to keep watching everything they do. Does that kind of make sense? Like, I don't know if I'm describing where they fit very well in the video game spectrum.
I think I have a pretty good fit on it. Pretty good handle on it.
Okay, cool. Now we're getting into basically my top 3 recommendations. So one is, I found this very recently. It's called Movies with Mikey, and I think I talked about it a little bit.
I think so, yeah. I think I remember you talking about this one.
Yeah, it has made me interested in movies that I never would have otherwise checked out. At its core, it's kind of a movie review show, but he will, again, he'll only review movies and dive in deep when he has something that's worthwhile to say about it. He won't just do it for the sake of getting content out there. Movies with Mikey is just, it's fantastic if you're interested in movies and cinema in any way. And this was honestly part of the inspiration that I had to go back through movies and TV shows and games that I like and give them another shot and give them a deeper analysis. Like I told you, I started to do with Scott Pilgrim, and I started to go back through some TV and stuff. It's directly because of Movies with Mikey. Like, wow, his love of the craft and like everything that goes into it inspired me to be like, yeah, I got to go back and really like dig in deep on some of these movies I like and see why I like them so much and see if I really love them and see if I can figure out like what are some of my favorite movies. Because I don't know. I don't know like favorite movies. I could tell you favorite series probably, but that's kind of copping out, you know?
Yeah. I mean, having favorite, that's odd to me. Like I cannot wrap my mind around not having favorite movies.
I legitimately don't have favorite movies because I don't rewatch stuff enough for it to have become a favorite.
Okay. Huh.
So yes, Movies with Mikey has inspired me to go back and start digging into that kind of stuff. CGP Grey, I'm going to keep messing it up. CGP Grey is a little bit like Kyrgyzstan, a little bit like Vsauce, in that it's just kind of like topics that make you think, but are also educational. He does stuff that sometimes it's super educational, but it is never ever boring. Like, he covers topics like voting systems and like geography of the world, borders between countries. He has a series on like automation and what automation is going to mean for the world. One of his videos was about like coffee and how the coffee industry works right now in the modern world. He has a history of the royal family of Great Britain. He has, a series on the domestication of animals, and one about like the Black Plague. And they don't necessarily directly ever tie into one another. Sometimes they do. Sometimes like one series kind of leads into the topic for the next, but it's just kind of whatever he thinks is interesting. He educates you about it, but keeps you entertained the entire time. So I've watched all of CGP Grey videos, and if I run out of things to watch ever and I want something to just something, kind of like my default, I'm just going to watch whatever. Yeah. I will almost always go back and watch CGP Grey, or my last recommendation here, Every Frame of Painting. Like, these are my two absolutely favorite YouTube creators that are out there.
And what's really interesting to me is that through all of the video game stuff that you do, and like that being your thing, that your two favorite YouTube channels are not gaming related.
Yeah, I mean, I never stop learning. Like, if I could be a perpetual student and get paid to do that, I would do that for my entire life. Like, I mean, I know some people hate school and they just got through it because you have to get through it. I had classes like that, I'm not going to lie. But
oh, yeah, everybody does.
I love learning. I'm always teaching myself new things. I'm always seeking out new information. So it doesn't surprise me at all that these are like two of my top ones, but I can see how, knowing my general interest, how it might be surprising.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm the same way, where I want to learn everything, like every last thing in the world I would love to learn. Like, that is a big existential thing for me. It's like, I will never learn everything I want to learn, read all the books I want to read before I die. And I'm like, oh. But yeah, sad times. But that's the thing. So I'm always pulling in things like that, and just wanting to know little tidbits and trivia, and even dive deep on whatever I love. But yeah, I totally get like wanting to just get that kind of thing invested, and just like those being your favorites.
Yeah,
it's hard for me to find someone I care about enough to watch all of that.
Yeah, and like I just love these channels. Like I said, these are the ones that I'm talking about, the ones I watch absolutely everything they've put out, and I've watched it multiple times, probably multiple times. So yeah, my last one is Every Frame of Painting. I know I've talked about it before, but it is, whereas Movies with Mikey is kind of a movie review show, and he gets you interested in movies you might not be interested in before, or like gets you out of your comfort zone, which is why I like Movies with Mikey. Every Frame of Painting is in-depth video essays on the production of film, and like how it works behind the scenes for cinema, and like what goes into, like the score of a film, or what goes into the action of a film, or the editing. And it's a really in-depth look that kind of bridges the gap between just straight up, here's how you do production, which is something like Rocket Jump Film School, very much like teaching you, this is school, I'm going to teach you. And something like Movies with Mikey, which is in-depth film, like critique and criticism. This is educational, but it's an essay format. I don't even know exactly how to classify it. But if you want to learn more about cinema, I can't recommend Every Frame of Painting enough. And a couple good places to start. Check out the Jackie Chan episode. It's about how to do action comedy. Check out the Edgar Wright episode, which is how to do visual comedy. Those are both like fantastic. And then there's one that's all about the Marvel Symphonic Universe, which is like how the Marvel movies don't really have like a soundtrack that you can recall off the top of your head, compared to something like Star Wars, right? Something iconic. Right. And why that is, and how you basically have like temp tracks that people use when they're editing video now, and how temp tracks are impacting composers in modern cinema, and how that has fed into the Marvel universe.
That would be fantastic, because we have a film festival here in Florence where every year people come in, and one of the connections is Yondu I don't know, from Guardians of the Galaxy. I can't remember his name now. The dude, like, he is really good friends with one of my friends at the university here, and like, so we have a connection to the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the crew and actors and stuff like that. So we had the sound designers come in at this film festival a couple of years ago, and we had the guy who did Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack, who picked all of the songs for it, and the sound designer for Iron Man 3, and just a bunch of these, like maybe even the one from Avengers, but there are like 4 people who worked on the MCU who came in through all of these connections that are here in Florence. And it was astonishing to learn about, while there's not that overarching kind of symphonic cohesion that Harry Potter or Star Wars or any of these have, that just the level of control that they have over the individual songs as they're played, not the score, but the actual soundtrack to it, that it was so fascinating to learn how all of that worked and how they were chosen and why they were chosen for so many things. That with that, like, go on YouTube, speaking of YouTube, and look for the Mandarin Chinese version of Blue, that song from the 90s, that Blue, dee boo dee ba ba doo, that one. And there's a Mandarin version that they had specifically written and recorded by the original artist for the Chinese release of Iron Man 3. And it's wonderful. And it was just stuff like that going into it where, no, there's no cohesion to it, but there are all sorts of very specific choices being made in terms of sound for it, for the overall MCU.
Yeah, and this is the kind of thing that makes me think that you would probably like every frame of painting if you gave it a shot.
Oh, I'm sure I would. I'm absolutely certain I would love it.
Cool. Okay, that's kind of all of my recommendations for the week. I wanted to get all that out there because, like I said, we had talked around YouTube a bunch, but we never directly addressed YouTube before. With that, let's get into our geeky offer of the week. So, as always, you can go to audibletrial.com/geek2geekcast and get a free book and support us at the same time. My recommendation for this week is the Ahsoka book, just because I've been watching a little bit of Star Wars Rebels still, and Ahsoka was on my mind. I had listened to this book back when it came out, and it's really cool because it's the voice actress that does Ahsoka. She's the one who's the narrator for the book, which makes it so good in an Audible format.
I have this on audiobook sitting in my library, and I did not realize that the narrator was actually Ahsoka.
Yeah, that's why it's just such a good fit for Audible. So again, audibletrial.com/geek2geekcast. Go get a free book, whatever you want. It doesn't have to be Ahsoka, but you could be because it's a good one.
Star Wars books, I do want to say Star Wars audiobooks are a production, and if you've never listened to an audiobook, it is a great place to start with a Star Wars one because they have an incredibly high production value, and the way that they put sound effects in, they are way more in depth than a lot of other audiobooks I've listened to.
Yeah, that's a good point. Almost all the Star Wars ones are like that. Cool. Okay, with that, it's time for Weekly Geekery, where we share what we've been geeking out about this week. What do you got this week?
Okay, Jen and Jeff, this is for you. Listen up. I watched Game of Thrones Season 6 this week. I actually had it on every now and then. I know last week I mentioned having just an episode on of The Expanse, of Game of Thrones, of Man in the High Castle, just bouncing between. Well, I hit an episode of Game of Thrones. I was like, I am watching this, and I powered through it and even stayed up late to watch all of Season 6 in a row. I think I watched 6 episodes that day. Like, it got good, y'all. Like, you are so right. Like, everything that you said about Season 6, Void got basically live tweeting of Season 6 during this day, where I know he was in meetings, I know he was at work, and I was working here like on my laptop, and I just kept like having all of these thoughts about it, and I just had to say it. And there were things that I was just like, oh my goodness, this happened, and I've been looking forward to this, and it's like, and it's like, it honestly, watching some of the stuff in episode 9, at the beginning of episode 9, not the awesome battle scene that you've told me about being really, really well shot, that it was the stuff at the beginning that was dealing with Daenerys, has made me want to write a particular new novel. Like, I really want to write dragon fantasy now, because I'm like, oh man, I forgot how much I love dragons. And it's just like, this season made this series better, and more than makes up for the really kind of terrible season 5 that made me stop caring about pretty much every bit of it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like I said, I told you that this is where it started getting really good again. And the problem is with kind of the underlying text, I feel, and not so much with the show. The show has always done the best with what it has.
Yes,
but
this is true.
Season 1 and 2 were book 1 and 2, but then season 3 and 4 were book 3, which is book 3 in, you know, Song of Ice and Fire is like the best one out of all of them that have been released so far. And the book series just totally loses its way in book 4 and 5. It gets super slow, not a lot happens, it gets really boring. I struggled to get through it and I made myself, but man, I hated those 2 books. Like I hated how long they were, how pointless so much of the stuff in them was.
Yeah.
And they took these 2 books that are just the 2 biggest books from the series, like massive book 4 and 5. They condensed all that down to 1 season to just get through it, because apparently they agreed that all of that stuff was like unnecessary and boring because they shoved it all into season 5. And
season 5 was pretty stinky because of it.
Season 5 is very slow because of it. But the other thing is that once they got to season 6, they are basically outside of the books now. They're into the stuff where they know basically what's going to happen because they've talked to the creator, but they get to make their own weight, and it shows so much.
Yes.
Because where season 1 through 5 of the show kept kind of ballooning up and getting bigger and bigger with the cast, and yeah, sometimes people get killed off, but overall the story kept growing consistently for season 1 through 5. Season 6 is where it starts to contract back in, and you start getting all of the payoffs that the entire series has been working towards. And I feel like it is only going to be like that the entire way through the end now. I don't think they're ever going to suddenly introduce new things that make the story balloon out with tons of new characters again. There might be a couple here and there, but nothing like what we've had before. I think it
I don't
all
think
is
so.
going to just, I think it's going to tighten up and it's going to speed up, and we're going to get payoff after payoff all the way through the end of the series.
And one issue that I've had with, and that's not saying that this season is perfect by any means. There are a lot of really questionable decisions that there are a lot of questionable decisions that the creators made going through. Like Sansa, I love where Sansa is in this season. That she has come through, and this is kind of a spoiler, but not really a spoiler. So give me like 15 seconds here. 20 seconds maybe. And she is a very, very strong character now, that she has stopped being this demure, silent type, but it falls back on the trope of that every strong woman has to be forged out of some sort of either sexual abuse or some sort of trauma in her background to make her that way. And that really upsets me that was what they used to do this. Instead of just having that be a base part of her personality, it was having to be instilled by some sort of just awfulness that had to harden her and change who she was at her core. And I don't like that. And then there were issues. I mean, there are always issues with pacing and subplots that don't really fit. I didn't think that the stuff with the Blackfish and Edmure Tully and all the stuff with River Run was necessary to this, because it never really tied into a lot of other stuff in the season I felt that those were almost tangential to have parts that I believe were in the novels bringing back into the series. And I liked some of the stuff with the Greyjoys and the Iron Islands, that some of that was interesting, and other bits and pieces of it were, I think it was character more than plot, which I really appreciated, but I think they lingered too much on it. They could have done a lot of the character development in different ways.
Yeah, no, that's all valid, but it's still a really, really good season of TV.
Now, I do have to say, I will criticize one thing about what you've said, about the, not about what you said here, but about the episode 9 battle scene, that there were moments that I thought were gratuitously violent rather than just showing the horror of war, but they did such magnificent job of making these giant like frontline clashes feel chaotic and that you never knew what was going to happen. They made that shot in a way that I've never felt before, and it was so good to do that. And then they ruined it by having slow motion sequences. that I thought those slow motion sequences didn't bring you out of that in order to give you a reprieve or a respite like it was supposed to, and instead felt like it was too stylized. So it had these two disparate examples of what war scenes should look like instead of picking one aesthetic and going with it. So that's me. That's how I felt about it. But overall, it is one of the most like intense battle scenes I've ever watched, and it made me never want to experience that in a way that no battle scene has ever done before. Because you always think about these sword fights being kind of heroic, and it's like, oh look, I'm on a battlefield, and it's like, man, no, this, when you see it, it's like, nope, don't want to do that. Like, never again. That is as disgusting and dirty as you expect it to be, and you feel it. It was like a medieval Saving Private Ryan, where it's just like, ugh, and visceral.
Yep, definitely. I still think it's just such a good episode of TV.
It really is.
And the fact that you get payoff for all these seasons that have built up, like, it's finally getting there. It's so good. Cool.
There is legit payoff. So
you were reading the next Rachel Kane book, right? How far are you?
Oh, goodness. I'm probably about a third of the way through it right now, third to a half, and it's super good. Like, she made one decision
We're
that
talking
I think
about Paper
is,
and Fire, right?
Yes. Yeah. Paper and Fire, the second great library by Rachel Kane, second great library book by Rachel Kane, and she made a decision at the end of the first one that's obviously one of the primary choices in this one, and I don't agree with the direction she took the main character. And without going into spoilers, I think that particular way of going was almost a cop-out and a cliche than maybe where it's going, you know, by the time I get to the second half of this book. But I'm totally invested and sad that I'm not going to get the third book until fall.
Yes, I think you'll feel better about it after you finish the book, because I remember the start, I was like, oh, this is where we are. That's interesting. I didn't have a negative reaction in the way that you did, but I did feel like the second half of that book becomes, I don't want to spoil it. I think you'll be okay with it by the time you finish the book.
I hope so, because the situation that Jess is placed in, I think, feels like a lot of other young adult books, as opposed to something that the first book didn't feel like.
Yeah, finish the book and then we'll talk.
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, for me, I tried the For Honor beta. I played on PS4, but I think it was on all the systems this weekend.
Yeah.
Have you heard of For Honor? Do you know what it is?
I've heard of it, and I've seen like that there was a beta, and that is the extent of my experience with it.
So it's essentially like a melee fighting game. Not a fighting game. It's like a third-person action melee combat game that's trying to be a different kind of melee than has ever been there before.
Okay.
And it's one where I really like it in theory, and I had loved everything I saw about this game right up until I got my hands on it. And I didn't like it. Like, I gave it a good 4 hours because people are like, oh yeah, you got to get into the systems and really give it a chance. And I mean, maybe when the full game comes out, the single player campaign will do a better job at like messaging and onboarding people. But there are a bunch of systems stacked on top of each other, and it's not really explained very well when you should be doing like which part of it. I don't know. I didn't like the execution. Like, it felt, I don't even want to say imprecise. It just felt like I was flailing around in melee combat. It didn't feel like it was advertised to feel.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
I know exactly what you mean by that. Honestly, the way that you're describing this feels kind of like the way that we felt about No Man's Sky, where there were promises made and it kind of fulfilled them, and then it's like it's just a little off the mark.
Yeah, I didn't love the execution. And, you know, I think a lot of people are going to like it. I think there are going to be people who love this game, and I'm just not going to be one of them, and that's fine with me. Again, maybe a single player that really walks you through the systems like slower and better explains it and gives you a chance to master them as you go along would be better than just this quick tutorial into a multiplayer beta. Like, that might be a big part of what I'm feeling right now. But it went from a game that I was super interested in to one that I will gladly wait until it drops in price if I ever even pick it up.
You can gamefly it.
Yeah, maybe that's what I'll do. I'll wait until, you know, next fall, and then I'll gamefly it or something like that next time I pick up Gamefly. And so Fire Emblem Heroes, I'm still playing a lot. I've been playing it every day now, and I'm slowing down, but not because I don't like it. It's because as you level up and as you get to the harder difficulty stuff, it costs you more and more stamina to do each battle. So in
Oh,
the
yeah.
beginning, it costs you like 1 or 2 stamina to do most things. Once you get to the point where I'm at, it's costing like 9 or 10 stamina almost every time I want to do a battle. And you only ever have 50 stamina at a time. So it's like 5 battles and then you're done, you know? So I'm slowing down on it. I still haven't felt like I hit a paywall. I still haven't felt like it's super mean about it. Like, I don't resent the developers, but I am definitely playing less every time I sit down to play it. Or I'm not even sitting down to play it. Every time I pull out my phone, I just don't play it for as long because I can't, which is frustrating. I hate stamina as a mechanic. I think it's dumb.
That is one thing that I usually hate, but Marvel Future Fight, I'm still playing that, by the way. I'm like 8 weeks in, maybe, or something like that, where I'm still playing this every day, and it has an energy mechanic, and even though I run out of energy, to me, it feels like, okay, now's a good time to put down this game, as opposed to an artificial limit on okay, now you have to buy this, because there are enough ways of getting energy in it where it's just like, okay, that means I'm out for a while, I'll go do something else now, as opposed to, like you say, in Fire Emblem, where it's just like, I can't go any further.
And see, I felt like that about half a week ago. So halfway between last time we talked about it and now, when things were costing about, I want to say like 5 to 7 stamina per thing. I think it was around 5 stamina each time. So it was about 10 battles every time you sat down to do it. That felt about right. It felt like I would do it, I would run out of stamina and be like, this is a good spot to stop. And before that, it was like I could go on forever. And I was like, when's a good point to stop this? And now it's like I'm not getting enough out of it. So there is definitely a middle ground. But now that I'm higher level in Fire Emblem Heroes, I feel like I'm beyond that. And I'm to the point where it's a little bit frustrating. And that might slow me down long term. But I'm still playing it every day.
Now, I have a question about Fire Emblem in general. That one of the issues that I'm having with it is, I care zero about the story. I mean, the story's super generic, and I know that you've told me about, caring about the characters is a big part of it and this overall story. It's like, I don't care about the story mode in this. Like, it lost me in, like, Chapter 2. And just the same kind of thing over and over again. But are the normal Fire Emblem games, are they as quick in battles as this, with as few characters and as small battlefields? Because the only issue that I'm really running into right now, and I'm playing it every day as well, just not quite probably as much as you are because you're so invested in the series, I'm playing it every day. I've got some characters around 20-ish, and it still feels like there's not nearly as much tactical, like, how can I even put this? It still doesn't feel as though there's as much, I go into as much strategy and tactics, because if I realize what happened, it's like one battle and in 3 minutes I've figured it out, just moved characters around just slightly differently and I win. It's like, are the actual Fire Emblem games more tactical than this? And does this get any more tactical as you go?
Yeah, absolutely. So the main thing is, this is the core of the Fire Emblem combat system, but it is only the core of it. There are none of like the really, really interesting tactical things in this game.
Okay.
The weapon triangle that you learn, the different colors and different weapons and how they're strong against each other. That's the core. That's the core of the system. And then leveling characters up and stats and that kind of stuff. But the real Fire Emblem games, well, this is a real game. The main Fire Emblem games, you probably have 3 to 4 times as many units on a battlefield that you do right now. And the battlefields themselves are magnitudes bigger, at least 10 times bigger, if not more than that. Like, they're huge compared to this.
Jiminy Williker's good.
Yeah, this is it distilled down to its form. And in terms of story, I would never say that the story part of Fire Emblem is great. It's usually pretty tropey. It's usually pretty guessable. But the characters in this are just like... The characters in Fire Emblem Heroes are just characters that have already existed in the series. And one of the big draws for me with Awakening and with Fates is that the characters, they get interpersonal relationships as you go through the series. And that doesn't exist in Fire Emblem Heroes at all. Like, there are whole relationship mechanics for friendships and for romantic relationships, and how characters can, like, get higher friendship ranks or higher relationship ranks with each other, and then how that ties back and affects them in battle. And you get custom cutscenes between 2 characters as they get to be more and more friends, basically.
All right.
And so there's all of this like interpersonal development, and that's probably one of my favorite things about the Fire Emblem games that I've played on 3DS. And that's not in Fire Emblem Heroes at all. you know? So keep all that in mind. Like, if you're interested Yeah, like, if you like the core of Fire Emblem Heroes, you should really look at one of the 3DS games.
And I probably will, actually. That's something that this game has done, is make me very interested in them, especially as much as I've heard you talk about them. And I figured it was a very, obviously going to be a mobile game and designed for that platform, which is very well designed for that platform. But I felt like there was just a little bit, like, I wish the battlefields were bigger. That is my biggest concern here, is that if they had shrunk the sprite size down just a little bit to give a little more real estate, I don't know, I wish it were a little bigger and had more game space.
Yeah, you should just look at a couple screenshots really quick from like Fire Emblem Awakening or Fire Emblem Fates. Just pull them up in your browser and you'll see right away what I'm talking about. But I did want to say, like, okay, I think that turn-based strategy is one of the best genre fits on mobile, and I don't know why we don't see more of it. I think that, like, there's so much more that could be done with it. And I know I've talked in the past, like, I think when we did our Blizzard episode, if we could tell Blizzard what game we want them to do next or what genre we want them to tackle next, I would pick turn-based strategy, and I would want it to be something like Hearthstone that's on all the platforms. I want to be able to play turn-based strategy on my computer and then take it on the go and have it on my phone and have it on my tablet if I'm sitting on my couch at night. Like, I want Blizzard to take on turn-based strategy and give me a game that I can play everywhere. That's kind of one of my dreams. And Fire Emblem Heroes is like partway there because it's a really good turn-based strategy, but it does have all that gotcha stuff on top of it. Did you look up the screenshots?
I did. I see exactly what you're talking about. That's exactly what I want out of the mobile game.
Yeah, so they have it. It's just on 3DS right now, and eventually on the Switch. They announced one is coming to the Switch in 2018. So
was it that long? I thought it was in 2017.
No, they announced a couple more games that are on 3DS, 2DS in the next year here, and then the one that you're probably thinking of is the Warriors game. So it's like Fire Emblem Warriors, which is basically like Dynasty Warriors with Fire Emblem characters. Which
I have zero interest in. Again, I tried to like that genre. That's one of them that I've tried to like over and over again and just consistently like bounce off of.
Yeah.
Because I love the idea of it. Like, it's super fun for about 10 minutes for me, and then I'm like, yep, I've done this.
Okay, that's fair enough. And then the only other thing that I've really done this week is I started getting back into the Genius game because I just put it on hold while I was busy with other stuff. And I watched about half of season 3. And I can still easily recommend season 1 and 2. Season 3 is not as interesting so far. It's like all of the game design that I had talked about, how elegant it was and how smart the actual games were in every episode. It's like they took that for season 3 and they made it 1 or 2 steps too complicated for each game, to the point where, like, you can't see how the systems all interconnect well enough until you're like almost done with the game. And then you can get some of that like social interaction back and forth. Like, if you do this, I can do this, and then we can do X together. Whereas in the first 2 seasons, you could, if you plan that stuff out at the beginning, if you set up your secret alliances and your, public alliances correctly, you could win the game before you ever started a game. And that was super interesting. You can't really do that in season 3 yet. But also, I'm in the first half of the season. Generally, the second half of the season, the game designs become more elegant because they have to tighten it up because there are less players as you go on. So I'm hoping that it'll get better. And the main reason I'm pushing through is because one of my friends who has watched all 4 seasons said that season 4 is actually an all-stars version. So they take all the good things with season 1, 2, and 3 and combine them into one of the best seasons. So it's worth it to push through.
And for somebody like you who legit got invested in all of the like seasons and those people, that sounds like a dream for you.
Yeah, so I'm hoping that season 4 will be really good. Even if season 3 kind of stays at the level it's at right now, I'm not bored by it, but it's just not as good as the first 2. I'm hoping that season 4 will be just worth the time and the effort, and I'll let you know when I get there.
Yeah.
And then I was going to do a secret second topic, but we talked a lot about other stuff, which is fine. I think... Okay, we were going to talk about Hitman because I've been playing a ton of Hitman and I made BJ play it and he has thoughts too. I think maybe we make this our topic for next week.
Yeah, and if not topic, at least half topic, depending on how much we can get out of it, which will give me more time to play it and potentially get better at it.
I think that what we might need to do is you play it and you stream it over to me so I can help you get a handle on the level.
That's not as fun though.
Well, okay, but
Oh, you should see me bumbling around.
I see this is also part of it. I want to see you bumbling around. But I mean, the first time through each level, it's a little bit frustrating. It's a little bit like, how do I even approach this? But once you start to learn some of the core concepts of each level, then you have enough information that you can start to build on that on your own, and kind of you make it your own. You learn to start slowly master the level by building out from what you know works. You know, once you get like the mission accomplished one time, you're like, okay, I have one way that I know that works. What can I do from what I know to build out towards these other things? And
okay, save it for next week.
No, I will save it for next week. The one thing I did want to tell you about though is, and this is for listeners too, if you are going to these Hitman levels and you're feeling a little overwhelmed, if you go into the menu, there's tons of challenges and feats and, you know, mastery levels and all these like escalation missions, all these things I've talked about a little bit over the last few weeks. One of them in there is called opportunities. And that is what you should follow when you first get into a level. Try to do all the opportunities, because if you walk through each one, they will give you obvious ways to complete the mission, but it also teaches you about that level and the systems within that level. So if you're looking for a place to start, if you can't quite get a grasp on it, start with the opportunities.
And don't be like I did, and when you get your first opportunity, see a way to do it and then ruin it.
Yeah, don't do that.
I ruin a lot.
Also, save scum. Save scum like crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it helps a lot. Okay, cool. I think that's it for this week. You can write to us with comments, suggestions, or feedback. Our email address is geek2geekcast@gmail.com, or reach us on Twitter @geek2geekcast. We also have our longer discussion threads on our subreddit at reddit.com/r/geek2geekcast.
Which is fantastic, where we have weekly geekery for all of the listeners, where there's a great discussion going on there all the time. So jump over there, even if you're not a typical Redditor. And if you want to get any kind of email updates whenever any of our network's podcasts show up in your feed, you can sign up at geek2geekcast.net and just tell us which of the shows you want to know when they come out.
I blog at agreenmushroom.com, less right now, but I'll pick it up here again as I settle into the new job. And you can find me at grnmushroom. That's green mushroom without the E's on Twitter. That's the best way to get me.
It is. And same for me. I'm on Twitter as @Professor Beej. That's Beej with 2 E's. And I blog and occasionally podcast at geekfitness.net.
We've been Void and Beej with your Geek to Geek podcast. That'll do it for this week. See you next week, geeks.
Kitty videos. Watch kitty videos.